What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Passionate DJ Podcast. I'm your host, David Michael. Joining me on the other line is the one and only, the Mighty Mo Dingo, and this is episode 185, where we're talking about rookie DJ mistakes. Just common mistakes made by noobs. We haven't done a kind of beginner DJ type of episode in a while, and so we thought that we might bring some points in, share some things that maybe our friends in the Facebook, the Passionate DJ Facebook group. Before we get into the main segment, I do want to say really quick, just do a couple of quick plugs. If you want to check me out on my personal YouTube channel, check out Tony's new Twitch channel, Trip on his SoundCloud, or Mo on his Mixcloud. I've made it really easy. I've just made nice, simple URLs for you to go to, passionatedj.com/David, Tony, Trip, or Mo. We'll bring you to whatever we're trying to promote at the time, which are those things right there. My personal YouTube channel is just things that maybe aren't DJ related, but have to do with retro gaming or something like that. Or maybe personal DJ sets and stuff, but not stuff that we want to publish here on Passionate DJ. Tony's started a real nice, he's got a real nice Twitch setup with a green screen and everything. He's going to be promoting things on his Twitch channel. And then, of course, you can't miss Trip's original work, which can be found on SoundCloud, and Mo's awesome mixes on his Mixcloud page. Once again, you can either hit the show notes for this episode or just passionatedj.com/our name, and you'll go right to those links. The other thing I want to mention before we move on is our October special. Every October, we sell our classic logo tee, our special midnight edition. This is a dark gray on black with the classic logo that we used to use before we changed it over to the one that's on the website now. It's a big fan favorite, and we offer it only for these 30 days or so. So passionatedj.com/midnight to get yours. All right, so we're going to move over here to the call with Mr. Dingo.
Chilling with some space cats. You know how I roll.
I love your backdrop. Those of you watching on the YouTube channel are going to love Mo's selection there. So I know.
Oddly enough, I'm not a cat person, though, but, space cats as your backdrop, that's fire right there.
That is fire. So you're a busy man today.
Yeah, I am. For those of you that have been following the show for a while, know I retired from the military about a year ago, and since then I've been working from home. It's cool to work from home, but also at the same time, your hours aren't necessarily clearly defined.
Tell me about it.
Because the customers that I support are literally all over the globe. So there's been times I've had to wake up at the ass crack of dawn to talk to clients in Japan, and there's times I've had to stay up till way beyond midnight to talk to clients in Germany. So I mean, it's all cool. It's part of the give and take of being able to work from home. But tell you what, man, I can't complain, not one bit.
Well, I appreciate you slicing out a little bit of time to talk about the subject today. I know we only have you for limited time, so do you want to... But
I will make time for you, David.
Oh, I appreciate that, sir.
And the people, because this is the people's podcast.
Passionate DJ Nation, as you call them. They love it.
Yes, I do.
And they love and appreciate you for that. So
Word.
I guess, I said something about doing the topic of rookie DJ mistakes, and you seem to really want to get in and, say a couple things about that. So
yeah, because I think I've made all of them.
Fair enough. I feel that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you want to, do you have some notes of your own that you want to record as a segment, or do you want to go over the points that I have already, or how would you like to do that?
And we can do a little bit of both, because the angle I was approaching this was going to be from the mobile aspect, because of the four of us, I do the most mobile work.
Okay.
I know everybody at some point in their DJ careers has done a little bit of mobile work, but since that's kind of the space I live in currently, and a lot of our listeners seem to be in that space as well, I just figured it would be cool for me to offer some insight into that niche of this world we call DJing.
Absolutely. No, that I appreciate you bringing that perspective to the table, because you've got so much under your belt when it comes to that side of the equation.
No, as we roll down the list, believe me, I'll interject some stories, because reading the show notes, I was like, oh yeah, I've done that. Oh, yep. Yeah, I've done that. Made that mistake twice. So,
well, the one that popped right to the top of the list as soon as I made the post in the Facebook community group was Tranwrecking. It was usually the first thing that just pops in your head is the actual audio clashing of a poor mix. Maxim Scott Mooney in the Facebook group was within 2 minutes brought that one up, and then a couple other people agreed.
I remember that popping up real quick.
Yeah, that's kind of the quintessential noob mistake.
Yeah. I think a lot of that stems from some of the other pieces that we'll talk about here, but just the overall train wrecking. I think some of that goes back to the you don't know what you don't know. I mean, we know what DJs, or we listen to DJs, like whether it be through pre-recorded mixes or we see them perform live in front of us, but a lot of times we don't know what's actually occurring while they're quote DJing.
Right.
Because I remember Tripp tells a story about when he first learned about DJing. Like he thought one record had the rhythm section and the other record had like the highs and stuff like that. So he didn't really understand that they were two completely separate songs. So
yeah, the other thing about train wrecking is like it also depends on the context, right? Like a lot of people who approach this from the club side of things tend to think about train wrecking, like locking in a mix, as being kind of paramount to what they're trying to do and the art that they're trying to create and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like,
agreed.
You know, a lot of wedding DJs don't even care about beat mixing. They might, transition in other ways. And so for some people it's, slamming faders or whatever. So it's not as important in some contexts as others. In some contexts, it's everything.
Absolutely.
One of the points that I wrote down was poor gain staging. In other words, bad volume control in general. And this could also be something that kind of relates to this is not regularly checking your monitors or master output to see if what you're hearing in the cans is what they're
what's
hearing.
going out. Yeah.
And it's funny because actually, as we're talking, I just got a message from I posted like a behind the scenes photo to Instagram of like, hey, getting ready to record rookie DJ mistakes. What do you think about when I bring up rookie DJ mistakes? And our friend Gunner from the Bedrock episode, my buddy Tommy, he says, thinking the Q channel is muted, then realizing what you're hearing through the phones is playing through the monitors on stage. So hearing the crowd hearing you beat match or whatever, would be a disaster, for example.
When I doing mobile work, when I had gotten a new sub, so I thought arbitrarily with my tops, I would just turn down the low end a little bit and then crank up the high end just a tiny bit to offset it. A huge mistake. Because like I walked out there like about an hour into it and like I was like, oh my God, this is piercing. I was like, why aren't these people deaf by now? And I was like, I went and I adjusted everything very quietly. Then about 15, 20 minutes later, walked back out there. I was like, okay, I'm not going to get sued.
I think that's probably one thing that you probably learn quickly as a working mobile DJ is that it's easier for you. So take the case in point where you are sort of playing and monitoring with the same rig. So maybe it's a small to medium kind of setup where you bring one set of tops and a sub or whatever. Yeah. It's much easier to tell what the bass is doing from behind speakers than it is to hear what the tops are doing or what the highs are doing. Yeah. The highs are so directional. And so if you're in front of it, to your point, it might just be piercing ears, and you might just be there rocking it out. Yeah, like, you got a little thump going, and you're good, not knowing that you're killing them out there.
That's exactly what I was doing. I mean, there's probably dogs like that were on the other side of the bar. This is an outdoor wedding, so there's dogs like in a pasture, like a mile away, just like covering their ears and whining.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there. You remember my story of playing one of my own productions for the first time on a big rig.
On a big rig, yeah.
And I saw reactions that made me understand I should EQ my synths differently in the future because they sound differently out there than they did in my headphones.
You're like, this is not the desired effect.
Yes. They were really into it, and then suddenly they were really not.
Suddenly they were deaf. Yeah.
I learned quickly. Another thing was being unfamiliar with gear in general. So this can cause problems like, not knowing basic mixer functions. So you get up there and maybe you've practiced a lot, but you've only practiced your own little kind of routine, and you get up there and the crossfader's off, or is in reversed, or some feature is on or off, and you don't know what to do about it.
Or the scaling of the crossfader, like people are not necessarily aware of like how to set the staging on that, or know that their crossfaders do have staging as far as their curve.
Yeah. It's really helpful to know, like, not only your own little corner of the world, but also kind of like general, I don't want to say general DJ theory, but like having general hardware knowledge of what this stuff is supposed to do and the general concepts behind it, so that when you're presented with a scenario you're not used to,
when you're not at home,
when you're not at home and you're under pressure, you're not afraid to tweak a knob because you might not be able to get something back. You know what I mean?
And I think as a mobile DJ, I think that's kind of something you sort of have to learn by trial, because oftentimes you're not going to have tech support, when you're doing a mobile gig. You just sort of learn by doing and making those mistakes yourself. But maybe putting yourself in those situations, which I've heard you talk about, throwing yourself under the bus, when you're practicing like how to do certain things, like if this goes wrong, how do I recover?
Right.
What's my backup plan for X? If I don't have Y, then what do I do? So, and I think that just goes to that overall preparedness when it comes to being a rookie DJ.
And I realize this is one way in which, we're all pretty lucky because of Passionate DJ and because we're involved in our community and we have each other as friends. We all use different things. We all have access to different gear. We all get to play with different things all the time. People come over here to the studio and bring their stuff, and then we mess with it. Like DJ Access bringing his Reigns not too long ago for Fam Jam. So, we get to touch and handle all those things, and not everybody does. But that, and then
Trip making a recent purchase.
Yeah, Trip went and bought a whole Prime setup, which I can't wait till he lets us put our grubby fingers all over that stuff. But even though not everybody gets access to that level of gear, like I realize that's not practical. But that being said, I would encourage people to find opportunities to mess with gear that's unique to them or that they haven't messed with before.
Or creating opportunities for those things. I remember when I was a listener still, reaching out to you and asking you, like, how can I get exposure to these, to the quote big boy stuff like CDJs and 900s and Nexus setups, and you're like, well, sometimes you're just going to have to go find opportunities to get your hands on those things, because I just don't have $5,000 sitting around where I can go buy a Nexus setup. And do I need to rent one to keep in my basement for a weekend just to test it out? I don't know. It depends on what my situation is or what I'm getting prepared for. But if somebody, like in my instance, I have that 1000, the DDJ 1000, and I've loaned that out to a couple local guys who were interested in just either buying one, or they wanted to kind of get used to that form factor of the Nexus, which essentially it is, or like I call it, the Nexus with no brain.
Yeah, right.
Just to kind of understand the knobology. Now, it's not the Nexus setup, but it's kind of the next best thing you can get, without having it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to kind of touch on that too. Like, the nice thing is, at least nowadays, there are a lot more options for that, at least speaking specifically to, like, I want to learn the industry standard Pioneer kind of setup. Like, at least they being Pioneer have filled in spots in different markets and different price points that give DJs of all kind of stripes access to that record box functionality, and in some way or another, it'll translate across platforms. It might not be exact or perfect as compared to, a 2000 Nexus 2 setup and et cetera, but you'll at least, once again, you'll know what you're doing when you arrive at a record box setup. You'll understand the language.
Yeah, because since getting that 1000, I did have a chance to use a Nexus setup, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is just a little bit different, but not much. But when I looked at it, it wasn't like looking at a stick shift for the first time.
Right. It's not a spaceship. It's just got a few more buttons.
Exactly. I mean, really, the biggest thing, it's got the USB key. And that's really like about the one of the major differences in touchscreens. Yeah.
I think you had a list of points. You want to go ahead and run one or two of those?
Again, most of my points are going to come from the mobile realm, but I'm going to start off with setting your expectations too high. As we're talking about gear.
Oh.
And the thing is, and even I fell into this trap when I first started. I was like, oh, well, I need to have X speakers in these subs, and I need to have these lights, and I need to have this controller. Kind of stepping into that mobile world.
So it's like over promising.
Well, creating this unnecessarily high barrier for myself that that didn't really exist. I just created it and put it in front of me because I had this expectation of, like, I guess I wanted to appear a certain way, but there's absolutely zero correlation between the gear you have and your abilities as a DJ, whether it's mobile, club, whatever. You and your experience and amount of practice are what is going to make that event what it is from the musical standpoint.
And probably, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, probably you as the DJ care a lot more about the gear that you're using than anybody who hires you in that context will.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I guess I've been doing been doing CrossFit gigs since about 2013, but doing weddings since about 2015. I've had one person knew what my mixer was.
Yeah.
So you take one person
out of a bazillion gigs.
yeah. Out of probably about close to 2,000 participants, in any shape, size, or form, one person knew that I was using a DDJ 1000. So to that point, the people don't care; they just want to know that you can rock their party, however they're asking you to.
Did they say, "Bro, why are you using the DDJ 1000 instead of like Nexus 2000s, bro?"
About the only thing people might know the difference is just the software. Like, oh, well, I use Serato. Okay, cool. Or I use Record Box or things like that. But for the most part,
in my experience, if somebody is in the know enough to want to say something about it, then they're just excited to talk about it. Like, they don't care if they're excited if it's different. They're like, oh, is that virtual DJ? Oh, I spent a lot of time in Tractor, and you just suddenly it's a thing, and you can share points, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, and one of those things that I think a lot of new DJs don't take into consideration when they're trying to go in this mobile realm is that you can always rent gear. You don't have to, buy it all up front. Do a couple, rent some gear, do a couple of gigs, set some cash aside to, procure your gear, as you see fit. Because that's kind of what I've done. I started off with, there was that initial investment, which, like I said, never intended to become what it is today. But aside from that, everything that I've purchased since 2015 was a result of money that I made from CrossFit gigs. Like, nothing has come out of my personal account. It's all come out of, the DJ Dingo account.
Mo doesn't halfway hustle.
Dingo don't write checks. Straight cash, homie.
That's right. The next one probably really can relate to both sides of the coin here, the one that I wrote down, and that's being underprepared. And when I wrote it down, I was kind of coming at it from the context of not knowing your music, or at least not knowing the tracks that you're playing very well. And as a result, track runs out suddenly, or you end up with a key clashy kind of mix, or
the BPM changes.
Yes, the BPM changes suddenly. Whatever. Or to the point that you like to bring up, I know this is relevant as a mobile DJ especially, not being prepared for the sudden explicit content, even if it was not marked as such in whatever your library is, like Spotify, for example.
That's one of my... If you're a recent listener, when I do my mobile gigs, I'd say about 99% of the time I'm using DJ Pro, which has integration with Spotify. Spotify is great for a lot of things, but one thing they are not abreast on is properly labeling their songs, whether they're clean or explicit. There's been several times where something was labeled clean and it was not. I learned that lesson really quick. which again, that was my fault for being underprepared. I assumed that what was written on the label was correct, and it was not. But
Mo was playing a kindergarten graduation, and suddenly they got a dose of Snoop Dogg they weren't ready for.
Yeah. But a quick middle EQ, whenever a certain word comes up,
right.
tends to take care of that. But to that point, even further having to curate playlists in Spotify to make sure that I'm playing the right version, the clean version of a particular track. And also being underprepared when it comes to your audience. David, the one story that comes to mind when you're talking about being underprepared is the situation flipped on you when you were DJing. It was supposed to be a house, or they told you could play whatever you wanted, but then it just so turns out nothing but hip hop heads showed up,
right?
And you weren't prepared for that, but
especially because it was one of my earliest gigs. It was like the third time.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was like the third time I'd ever played somewhere other than the place where I played my first gigs, if that makes sense. So it's somewhere other than home, so to speak. And I got up there, and they're like, play whatever you want. Nobody will be there at 9:30. Well, a couple people were there, and it was like a birthday party or a bachelorette party or something. And they're like, they want to hear hip-hop. I'm like, that would be great. I didn't bring that, though. So I was kind of, I had a couple of, I had a Missy Elliott, house remix, and they were they danced for 5 minutes, and then, I ran out of tricks, and you don't want to be in that situation. That sucks.
Yeah, but that's a vastly different situation when you're told that this is the makeup of your crowd and you fail to prepare for that crowd. Yeah, right. that one, I commend you for surviving for keeping the ship straight on that one. Because
I don't claim that as a me problem, but it still sucked.
Yeah, as an artist who cares about what they're doing, you still have that weight on your shoulders, even though you had no control over that. But thumbs up on that one, bro, for sure.
Appreciate that. But, that just being underprepared thing, it's there's nothing like having that that moment of panic when you're especially if you're a new or a newish DJ, and especially if 200 eyeballs are on you or more. Yeah. Then it's kind of like, whoa, the simplest problem might cause you to freeze up because you're just kind of, the deer in headlights effect, I guess. Yeah,
and the key with those situations is to remind yourself not to panic, because my brother-in-law, Gary, says it best, nothing good ever came from a freak out. Name one time, everybody listening, watching, name one time in your life where you freaked out and the end result was positive.
That's a fair point.
Probably going to come up with a goose egg on that one. So, acknowledge the fact that, this situation is out of your control.
Yeah, I've been spurred into action, but I wouldn't describe it as that.
A freak out, yeah.
As a freak out, yeah. Because if you're freaking out, you're kind of inherently...
You've lost the battle.
You're not reacting properly to whatever is happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So, try and just assess the situation as best you can. Take yourself out of it and look at yourself, and then think about, okay, self, this is what you need to do. Just kind of take yourself out of a different headspace and just try and take a calm approach to it, because the one that comes to mind is our good friend DJ Serrato out in Arizona, when he said he was doing a wedding. And originally he was going to announce the bride and the groom. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, we got 14 people we need you to announce.
They all have 20-syllable names.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no.
Shout out Serrato, but he handled that, with dignity and class. I probably would, I've had those situations happen to me where things change at the last minute and they want to add things. And I'm, as much as irritation as I get, again, it's not about me. It's about what my customer wants for that day, and I have to do my best to accommodate it. So, but in a club setting, freaking out, the fader goes bad, your monitor doesn't work,
right?
You don't have lights in the booth. There's a myriad of things.
Something.
Yeah, you forgot an adapter. There's a myriad of things that can go wrong, and just hopefully in those situations you have people around you that you can go to, hey, can I borrow your headphones? I forgot my adapter, things like that, versus going back to that unprepared piece, oh, I didn't bring headphones. Oh, I didn't bring a USB stick. you know.
I've had my ass saved a number of times. I know for a fact Tony is in particular has saved my ass at least 2 or 3 times, even before Passionate DJ probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful to have friends, but it teaches you
Absolutely.
quickly to like either get a checklist or you know, or something to make sure that you've got everything, or do a, like I do. I always do a run through and set everything up, tear everything back down, put it in my bag just to make sure that nothing seems like it's missing when I do that.
I've started using like color coded Velcro straps for everything.
Oh, nice.
And then I have this big bag that I carry all my cables in. So I know, you know, I need to have 4 with this color cable in my power. I need 4 with this color cable in my my mics and speakers, you know, and things like that. And I know what it looks like when everything's right.
So if you're missing one color of the rainbow, you're like, indigo, indigo.
Exactly. So if I have 3 fuchsia Velcros, you know, then I know something's wrong.
Well, what do you think about being over-prepared? And what I mean by that is maybe not reading the crowd, just kind of being that bulldozer DJ and enforcing a particular playlist onto an unsuspecting crowd.
So, yeah, and I can speak to that on both sides, from the club aspect and from the mobile aspect, or CrossFit or corporate or whatever. I think it was my very first gig that I'd done since I, quote, came out of retirement, meaning I had children and had to be responsible. I had like my playlist like laid out to the second, you know, we're going to start this transition here and this transition there. And as I was playing stuff, like I just noticed that the crowd wasn't feeling, they were having a good time, but they weren't feeling it as much as I wanted to. And I had to like start to divert. And I was like, no, I made this playlist. I can't divert from it.
I put so much into this. Nobody cares.
They don't understand. You know, and just kind of, I mean, 5 years removed, like I look back on it, I was like, man, that was stupid, you know. But don't be so staunch in your desire to maintain this particular journey that you thought was going to occur at this show. Give yourself some buffer. And I don't remember where I picked this trick up from, but I've adopted it ever since. And the trick was to have twice as much music as you plan on playing. So if you have an hour set, have 2 hours worth of music, because that gives you some buffer. Because your head, when you're building that playlist, like your head is in a certain space. So if you can kind of give yourself a little bit of flexibility, but still have that crate that's curated for that particular set, now you have almost unlimited options. And if you really want to get nuts with it, you can start drop mixing, you know, and even put, you know, even more songs in there. So
yeah, if things are going particularly well, you can just get crazy with it.
Yeah. And ever since I've kind of given up a little bit of constraint on that, like there's been times where I'm just like in the middle of a set, I'm like, oh, I need to drop this in, and I'll go like way out of the crate and just load something up. I'm like, yes, this worked perfect.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's something that I've always kind of followed, though I don't know if I read that somewhere, if that's just something. I feel like it was like anxiety driven. Like I should not have exactly as much music as I plan on playing.
Yeah. Tony's told us stories about him hiring DJs, and when a DJ either finishes early before them or doesn't show up, or the DJ that they're supporting, you know, doesn't show up on time, and the person's up on behind the decks, and they look at Tony like, "Hey, I'm out of music." You know?
Yeah.
And Tony as a promoter is like, what do you mean you're out of music?
That's your problem. That's what I hired you for. Yeah, you don't want to be that guy, because then you're just looking like that douchebag.
Yeah.
So the example I like to give is for my personal story bank is when I opened for Sasha.
Killer set, man.
Oh, thank you.
David left his jump drive in the booth. And you bet your ass I took that shit home. I rescued it, and you bet your ass I took that shit home and copied it.
No, I'm blushing. Stop. But that was like a really big deal kind of gig for me. It was I
would hope so.
You know, an iconic person, a legendary person to warm up for. It was a really big room with really big sound. I knew there was going to be a big turnout, and it was being thrown by friends.
Yeah.
So I felt this immense sense of responsibility. And for Trip, he's talked about Paul Oakenfold show in a similar manner. That was kind of his recent one. You feel this weight that you like. This crowd's depending on me. Tony's depending on me.
Dayton is depending on me.
Dayton is depending on me to have a good time tonight. And so it's like you start having this conversation with yourself, like, to what extent should I compromise my artistic whatever in order to make sure that this is functionally correct
for the night.
For the night, right? So the way that I approach that, and the way I approach even a lot smaller gigs, I really kind of do the same thing, is like I'll put a main kind of playlist, but then for that one I put like a secondary playlist that was almost like, I hate to use the term filler, but it could kind of fit anywhere in the set.
I think that's what you called that second folder in that jump drive.
Okay.
Because when I looked at it, you had your main folder with your songs that you wanted to hit, and then you had something, and I think it was labeled filler. And I looked at that, and I kind of listened to him. I was like, okay, I think I understand what he was doing with this. This is like your secret pitches were in that folder.
It needed to be elastic. So there was nothing super crazy that happened in there, like melodically, or there was like no vocal tracks in there, that kind of stuff. And so that way, because you want to talk about stuff that's anxiety driven, right? So it's like, I didn't want to be up there standing in front of like my hero, and then like maybe he's half an hour late for whatever reason, or something happens and I just run out of music. Like, what am I just going to run a loop for 20 minutes, So that gave me, if I saw that coming, then I knew to start filling some of that space out in between the tracks that I already kind of wanted to play. And so that way, you still feel like you're contributing something to the set that's artistic, but at the same time you feel prepared.
Absolutely. And then the other part of that, like you just mentioned, kind of is the overload, like having too much in front of you. And I think we talked about this on episodes before, just when we talk about libraries and crates, like how much is enough and how much is too much. Like I think off the top of my head, if I look in my my MacBook, I probably have like 24 hours worth of music, which is a couple thousand songs,
right?
And it's probably safe to say there's some songs in there I've never even played.
You could play a pretty long set if you needed to.
Exactly. And I think I mentioned this was like the best part and the worst part of joining a record pool when I first started DJing again, is that I was like, oh, I'm gonna download this and download this and download this, and I was just downloading everything but wasn't playing everything.
Gotcha.
So sometimes having more options is almost too bad, because like I said, I overloaded myself with things that I could probably I could probably go through iTunes and hit sort, and there's like probably 100 songs that have 0 plays on them.
Right. And now with streaming, you have the world at your fingertips. Yep. So it's good because you can fulfill nearly any request. So from that perspective, especially as a mobile DJ or something like that, that's awesome. But what about the person who kind of needs some limits to inspire creativity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Then that's where sometimes having too much, it falls in that overdoing it and being overprepared, that whole lane.
Speaking of overdoing it, what about overdoing it as far as trying to mix in a hyperactive manner, or get crazy with the flanger, or
getting a little bit crazy with the effects?
It's easy for me to complain about because I'm so effects light. I've just always been that way. But not everybody is, and a lot of people do cool things with effects, and it's not that I never use them, but it's just I will probably back off before a lot of DJs will. But I think that new DJs really tend to want to, especially in the digital era, want to try to fill space with knob twisty, cool, ear candy thingies.
Yeah, and then for me, like it's there's three different hats I wear as a DJ. So like the CrossFit stuff, I'm not using effects. Those people are out there dying. They just want to beat. They can move weight too. Corporate, wedding, like I'll do Trip's favorite, and I'll do that echo out. Transition from one song to another. But when I'm actually performing, a show, I'd say I'm pretty effects light because with house music, they're pretty much the effects already in the track.
Right.
Unless there's something specific I'm trying to achieve, where maybe I'm like cutting the bass line out of one track and jacking the bass line from another track and laying those two over, and maybe like doing a slow filter sweep to kind of transition those in and out.
Yeah.
Little flanger here and there, a little echo, little reverb.
I was gonna say other than kind of like audio sculpty type things, like filtering and trying to layer things and make them work. About the only time I use effects for like an excitement sparkly thing is like maybe I'm playing like techno or something, and then maybe there's like a particular moment where the crowd is really just locked in. And sometimes that only happens for a few minutes in an hour. And so if you see that happening, then it's like, maybe somebody came out and started breakdancing, got everybody excited, and they're going to be excited for a good 5 or 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So then I might like jump in and like do a little filter up with a little bit of reverb on it and do like force a build in there that maybe wasn't in the original track and kind of create one on the fly.
Yeah.
Then they see that I'm doing that. They go, yay, wow, cool, the DJ did something, and it was actually kind of functional and served a purpose, you know what I mean? So I like it for that, but I think, like, as we relate it to rookie DJ mistakes, like, a lot of people they're like, I can't just stand here, so I just need to start hitting buttons and twisting all the knobs because this is what DJs do.
Yeah, and Tony speaks about that a lot because and even DJ Craze talked about it, these DJs being cheerleaders and ghost fading and doing all these stuff just to make it look like they're doing something because that's the expectation is, the DJ has to be touching knobs and everything.
Right.
I'm horrible for that because a lot of times there's just nothing that needs to be done.
Yeah, you don't want to look stupid or bored or like you're checking your email or anything like that up there either. So it's hard to find that balance between I'm not faking this. You don't want to mime, but at the same time,
exactly.
You don't want to look bored.
And I've tried to do better to work on that because I'm really bad at like digging into the mixer and just staying focused in there. And I've tried to, instead of me, miming and stuff like that, I try and force myself to look at the crowd and like point at people and, do a little bit of the cheerleading stuff. But I think in that wedding scenario, that's what they want the DJ to do, and that's fine. But for me, it's more of an exercise of me getting my head up and looking at the crowd because I'm horrible at that.
Speaking of Tony, he just replied on Instagram, accidentally hitting the pause button and looking at the stage manager like it's their fault. Know your gear. Know your gear.
I've been with Tony on, I can count 3 occasions where I've been supporting him being a backline tech, and like DJs that I love and like I'm actually going to go see one here shortly, but I remember it was the first time I worked with him, and then the DJ's up there and all of a sudden he just stops and he looks at Tony. He's like, what the fuck? Tony goes up there and Tony's looking, he's like, you hit the power button. And Tony just walks off. Yeah. And, that's what these organizations pay Tony for because, he's like the bomb detector guy. He goes in there and he snips the wire and he walks out,
And he needs to be able to do that and handle that calmly without calling him a fucking idiot or something to keep the situation calm.
And I've seen him do that multiple times, and it's just like he's like that mythical creature in the movie. Like he comes out of the mist, and he says a couple words and does something and then just drifts back, and everybody's like, whoa.
Our friend DJ Access also on Instagram said redlining, kind of going back to our gain control.
And just like our good friend Tom Reed tells us, red lights are for prostitutes.
Red lights are for prostitutes.
To piggyback on, like I said, the mobile stuff, setting your expectations too low. Don't show up to a paid gig with a Beats pill and an iPhone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've heard of it happening, and that's why I wrote it down.
So you don't have to have 20 grand invested, but also be a professional.
Yeah, you don't have to have like $20 invested either.
Right.
You need to have a professional setup, and what I mean by that is, don't come up there and say, "Hey, do you have a folding table or whatever?" And then you set your speakers on some milk crates, and everything just looks a mess. You need to have at least access to speakers and a table,
Yeah.
as a DJ, and make your setup look professional as you can with what you have.
Figure out how to manage all those cables and things.
I mean, if all you have is a set of speakers and some poles, some speaker poles, like, at least try and make it look neat, kind of Velcro them to your stands. You don't necessarily have to have scrims, if you're early on that phase, but just whatever you have, make it look as clean and as neat, as polished as possible. You have to have a fitted cover for your table. I mean, for me, I have a bomb ass mother-in-law who can sew her ass off, and she made one for me. It's got like pockets and it's got holes in it so I can feed the cables through my table because I drilled holes in it and everything. It's like total custom, awesome setup. But can you just go to Hobby Lobby or Michael's and get like a black piece of fabric and just kind of make it look a little sexy? Yeah, absolutely.
And even so, I mean, even if you just want to throw money at that problem, you can solve that for cheaper than you think. And you slap, nice fitted cover with a really classy logo on it over your basic 6-foot fold-out table that you can get at Walmart, and suddenly your setup is upgraded significantly.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I did for the few mobile gigs that I played was I got that in black. So I had a white logo, but the skirt was black. Because that actually really helps to hide a lot of the cables.
Yeah, because most of your cables are black.
You just can't see them. And so then I would, former guest Matt Freeman and I used to play a deep house night at a local kind of loungy restaurant place. And we would use that, and then we would take black hand towels and washcloths and just use it to cover up whatever was left. And we were able to set up just super duper fast every time we wanted, because we didn't have a lot of setup time, but everything just disappeared into the darkness. It was awesome.
Yeah, don't just go up there and set everything and start jamming. Try and make it as sexy as possible, with what you have. You don't have to have these hydraulic speaker stands and a whole like setup trussing system. Just work with what you have.
Clean and simple is key starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that you wrote on here that from the club aspect, disregarding the importance of progression.
Yeah, and there's a couple of ways we could think about that too. Like there's the progression of a set, and then there's the progression of the night proper, right? So Johan Bjornsson, he's one of the members in the Facebook group, and he's submitted all kinds of things, and I'm sure he's already corrected me on the pronunciation of his name. So I'm sorry for butchering that. But he posted in the Facebook group, facebook.com/ passionatedj.com/community. He writes, thinking that the progression of energy up and then down throughout the night isn't really that important.
It is.
Yeah.
Don't kid yourself. And the example I'll use, we'll go back to your night where you did direct support for Sasha. You did an excellent job of maintaining an energy level that had its peaks, but you didn't go like hard, because that wasn't your job, is to go hard. Your job was to get the crowd ready for Sasha.
Yeah, not in that particular gig, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we take it to like a house party or something completely different.
Right.
You get fist pumping and ass shaking, because your set is your set.
And nowadays it's so different because live streaming is such an aspect of being a DJ and YouTube and things like that it's like, what does it even mean to have that kind of context? It's everything's kind of random depending on where you are in the world when you scroll past it on your feed or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And the way when I do live streaming, I mean, I've done it a couple times, not very many, but more so, how I have mixes on Mixcloud. It's more of like my roadmap is always that late hill where I'll build up, and like in that last third is where I hit max velocity, and then I taper it down from there.
Our friend Mike Donovan also posted in the Facebook group, not knowing the history of your local DJ or dance music scene. Of course, this once again relates more to the undergroundy, maybe club DJ kind of thing, but you could maybe make that more generic and just say not doing your homework. But I like the specific focus on that because that gets missed so often. People don't really care about who came before them and what the scene used to be like. And man, I tell you, that's when I was getting into this, that was one of the things that I found to be the most fascinating. I wanted to know who all the players were now and back in the day, back in the rave days.
Yeah, where did this come from?
Where did it come from? Who made it happen? Where, what were the venues and all that kind of stuff. And I learned so much about my town just from pursuing that knowledge from that angle, and it was kind of neat. And I think you miss a lot by not doing that.
Well, I will make this argument. You're not going to lose anything by doing that research. That's for damn sure.
Right.
If nothing else, you'll have the knowledge, history, and most often you'll gain an appreciation for what it is you're doing. And when you hear an amen break, when you catch it in your head the first time, from a drum and bass track to, a hip hop track, you're like, oh, wait a minute. That was the amen, and just little things like that, knowing your history, knowing what came before you. Yeah. And even just like, understanding the progression of DJing from, going from vinyl to digital, just understanding and having an appreciation for all that as an art.
And I think, it's probably important to say, like, the rookie mistake is not playing a gig before you have a comprehensive understanding of the history of DJing. No. It's just the rookie mistake would be to not care about those things, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's so much context that can be added to your, the context that you bring to your DJing.
Yeah.
And knowledge is power, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of this is kind of societal, where a lot of times we want the information in front of us. We want it now. And, because you can ask Google anything, and it'll tell you. Where back in the day, like, we didn't have Google. We had to talk to other DJs and find out about, so how come there's no more raves here?
Right.
Oh, well, the Rave Act. What's the Rave Act? Oh, well, this guy, Disco Donnie, the feds went after him and blah, blah, blah. And then, like, it's this whole outlaw Jesse James. Yeah, and it's this whole outlaw Jesse James thing. And you're like, man, the man went after one dude to shut down raves? Are you serious? And if you're a new listener, check out that interview that Tony and David did with Disco Donnie. It's like an amazing history lesson in
one of our classic episodes.
Yeah, it's an absolute treat.
B-Funk posted in the Facebook group, I love all the activity from former guests on the show. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
He says, new DJs chasing the fame and notoriety and not the passion of mixing records. Too often they get confused. Too many people are addicted to the crowd's energy and not the love of music. I thought that was pretty insightful. I love the way that he put that.
Well, of course he would put it that way because he's so eloquent, when it comes to stuff like that.
Our friend B-Funk is like right in the pocket for our target audience is. He is a passionate DJ if I've ever seen one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read that again just because I thought it was so well put. rookie DJ mistake is new DJs chasing the fame and notoriety and not the passion of mixing records.
Yeah. It's
you have a lot more, a lot longer lasting foray into this if you care about the music and what you're doing to it, rather than look at me, cool DJ.
Yeah. For as much as people at one point said that this was just going to die, kind of like rap music and hip hop, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Like I'm like kind of mentoring this kid who's 10 years old right now. The kid that I gave my S2 to for his birthday because he told his dad he was interested in DJing. I'm like, yeah, sure. Here, take this, go do some amazing stuff with it. Man, dude's has no musical training. And he added me on Instagram. I didn't know who he was. It's like, hey, can you listen to this? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm listening to it. And it's like, he put together a couple beats and I'm like, and once I realized who it was, I called his dad. I was like, hey, is this your son? He's like, yeah. I was like, have you listened to anything he's done? He's like, no, not really. I was like, you need to check it out. And he's like, well, I hear him doing it all the time, so I don't know. I was like, no, you don't understand. With a 10-year-old with no musical training is able to put together a well-rounded, I mean, granted, he's 10 years old, but he's putting together beats.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to nurture this. He's like, really? I'm like, absolutely. I was like, and when he starts touring the world, remember, that I put you on this.
Remember Uncle Mo.
But it's not going anywhere. I'm sorry, it's not.
Mo, you brought one up in the Facebook group when we were talking about this that kind of had to do with maybe having too much dependency on one particular service or another. And horror stories surrounding that.
Yeah, I've had a couple people at venues. So a lot of the weddings I do, well, in this part of the country, in this part of the world, the kind of hip thing to do right now is like these barn weddings. So when I say barn wedding, I really mean like it's out in the country in a barn, rustic type setting. Really cool. Because the dope part about it is if it's like a really old barn and it's like, rustic and everything, like the acoustics are amazing in there because it's all wood and the ceilings are curved and everything. So there's no echoes and it just sounds baller. But also with that means you're not super close to like the city, therefore cell towers. And I've had people tell me like, a guy came up and he said, he asked me for a Wi-Fi password. I'm like, what do you need my Wi-Fi password for? He's like, oh, well, I stream all my music, and it's okay if you're going to stream music, but you got to be prepared to have that music streamed or not have that. To not have the foresight to either have a hotspot with you or go out and check to make sure you get cell signal at a particular venue, or even coordinating with the venue owner to even see if you can use their Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. I mean, that's like the modern equivalent of I lost my records or forgot my records. It's like, oh my God, I can do literally nothing, none of my job right now if you're not prepared for that kind of scenario.
But to that point, 20 years ago, I never forgot to bring my records to a gig. I might have forgotten a record or a cartridge, but not my records.
Not like, oh, I didn't bring any music.
Yeah.
Like you had one job.
I didn't bring those 3 20-pound crates of round vinyl to play for these people.
It's easy to overlook those.
Yeah, but sort of that dependence upon technology, it will fail you at some point. I've had venues that were even in the city where I couldn't get a good cell signal with either of my hotspots. But you know what? I had a ton of, I have that 24 hours worth of music on my laptop, and guess what? I made it through because I had a backup plan to the backup plan. Two hotspots and my hard drive, and still made it through. So, but things like I did a gig with Brains, and his hard drive took a crap in the middle of it. But luckily, we were there together, and we made it work. But
so our tip for the day is always travel with another DJ. I had 2 kind of rapid fire points here at the end. The first, a big rookie mistake is just getting wasted. I wrote it down as getting drunk, etc.
Yeah,
so wasted and whatever that means for you.
yeah, true. Good point. It is 2019. I personally don't drink if I'm providing music as a service. There is only one time I have drank, and that's when I told that bad gig story about that lady passing out. And, me doing first aid, self-aid buddy care, calling 911, doing an assessment, going to my Jeep and getting my first aid kit and giving her an ice pack and checking her pupils out and everything. And then this little girl, God bless her heart, but she was like, there's no music playing.
Preoccupied.
That's the only time in my mobile DJ career where I've taken a drink on the job, because I was like, I need to calm the fuck down right now.
And then the other one I wrote down was just playing, low quality sound. And this was something that will just stand out like a sore thumb if you're the DJ that is obviously playing like a low bit rate SoundCloud rip in the middle of the set on at high volume on a big club PA. You're gonna hear that shit, and it's gonna sound terrible. And the patrons might not know why. They're just gonna be like, "This sounds like crap."
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, look up Square Wave. Those are bad.
And
for all of you, of you watching, do not rip your music. Do not rip your music.
Yeah, you'll end up making the venue look bad and the sound guy look bad, and they won't like that either.
Well, you might even damage something, especially if it's your own gear.
Mo, that's all I had in my notes. Did you have some more points to go through before we wrap up?
Yeah, I got one last one before I roll out here. Okay. But to me, the biggest rookie mistake of all is not starting. There's the line in the sand about you starting is what you make it. There's no checklist out there you're going to find on Google that says, once you can do these things, you can be a DJ. It's not like getting a driver's license. You have to just make that leap and go do it. And you know what? Your first gig is probably not going to be amazing. Just going to put that out there right now. But also with that, going back to the not panicking, no one's going to know you made a mistake unless you let them know. Now, granted, if you train wreck or whatever, or you're offbeat or a little bit, to me personally, if anything, if I hear that, at least I know you're not using sync. You're actually taking the time to master that fundamental of DJ skill sets, which is beat matching, which people will. I mean, this is always. It's about time for that article to start some static. So maybe we should. Maybe the Google analytics will pick up on this. But yeah, the importance of beat matching. It's a fundamental skill, and because sync does not always work. And if you don't know why it's not working and you don't know how to manually beat match, you're doing yourself a disservice. Again, going back, relying on technology, it will fail you. Learn how to beat match. It's not that hard. If you can count to 4, you can beat match.
Yeah, I learned a lot about how I mix when I'm using Tractor just by learning how to mix records on CDJs. And that's hard to explain why until you just kind of do it.
Except for using CDs. Screw CDs. I hated CDs.
CDs are nonsense.
CDs, mixing with CDs was the worst thing ever created.
That was a weird in-between phase.
Yeah, we had to have that bridge, though. Yeah. I hope it never comes back.
Well, Mr. Dingo, you're a gentleman and a scholar. I recognize that we're out of time. You've been very generous. I know this was a very sudden recording, but you had a lot to contribute here, so I appreciate it.
But that's what we do, man. That's what we do for the people.
Much love, man. I appreciate that. All right, everybody, don't forget to check out that October special, that midnight edition of our classic logo tee. Once again, passionatedj.com/midnight. Check us out on all the things at Passionate DJ, and we'll see you next time, and keep on spinning. Peace.
Peace.